Welcome to the second episode of Lessons in Leadership. My name is Grant Krief and I appreciate everyone joining today. I would like to introduce our speaker for this session, someone who has an incredible amount of leadership experience and has been involved in numerous businesses across South Africa. He is the CEO of Thamani Group and his name is Abed Tau.
Thanks so much for having me.
So Abed, the point of this episode and of this series is really around making things practical for a lot of people, and they don't necessarily need to be the CEO of a company. They don't need to be a manager within a business. They can be at any level of the business. If we were to look at what you have noticed in the teams that you lead, what have you really understood to be one factor that's always stayed true to people that actually lead within your organizations?
The story that I'll try to tie that to is, I don't know if a lot of people know how Brian Chesky hired his first employees. He interviewed 900 people and he looked through something like 1,600 CVs. When people asked him why is he doing this madness, and Brian Chesky is from Airbnb, co-founder and CEO, he said it's so important that the first person is like a super cultural fit, because the people that follow that become almost like the identity of a business. So he needed to make sure that the first people that he gets into the business were right and were a cultural fit. What was more important for him was that the DNA of the business to sort of permeate. And within our organization and some of the stuff that we do, leadership has always been at the top of that. And we've always been a very people first and profit later organization. And amongst the years, as different people became leaders in our organization and we've promoted people, we've got partners to join, that culture and that fiber has always remained true, that we see people first beyond seeing them as resources to make profits. If you treat people with the command of them being first and that they matter and that their opinions matter and their suggestions matter, leadership becomes even easier because you work in an inspired environment where people want to follow people and they want to be inspired and led. So I think the common thread about the people that we've worked with has just been that people first, and making sure that when you lead, you're leading with the view that you want to create more leaders.
Brilliant. And just so that people have context as well. So in terms of the businesses that you have within your group, so there's one within the tutoring space.
Okay. We've been in full-time entrepreneurship now for 8 years. We've started a couple of businesses. Thamani is a financial services group. We've got Thamani Consulting, Thamani Assurance, Thamani Advisory, all separate businesses, different leaders. And then we run a tech house called Silicon Maboneng. So we build systems, we build apps for large to medium organizations. In another world, believe it or not, we own a bakery. We supply a big restaurant chain and a number of other restaurants. We've owned that for the past 3.5 years. You mentioned the tutoring business. So Dylan and I, another co-founder of mine, we started an education tech business and we managed to exit that successfully to a listed entity towards the end of 2019. Yeah.
And if we look at Thamani from the financial services side, with such an environment where there is regulation, where there is a lot of black and white in terms of what to do and what not to do, how do you create an environment for your team where it isn't too restrictive for them to contribute meaningfully and to the best of their ability, but still make sure that those certain regulatory frameworks are abided by and non-negotiable?
Entrepreneurship, by the nature of it, we think about it as like this creative process, and it is. And I think you don't really want to hear that your accountant or your auditor is creative, right? That's the first thing. But I think there's something to be said about making sure that you don't lose the sense of entrepreneurship and sense of ingenuity that entrepreneurship comes with. So I think we allow our guys a sense of freedom in terms of how they express themselves, how they want to work, creating flexibility. And you're absolutely right. From a regulatory perspective, there's definitely the do's and don't do's. And that for us is a super non-negotiable. But what we don't dictate is how people work and how people get to solutions. And we over encourage people to, if you found a different way, if you found a better mousetrap in terms of how to tackle the work, we are all ears. And that's important about any organization that you find yourself in. Quite often as leaders, we sometimes are guilty of owning the full solution, and you don't allow the flexibility of thinking that maybe there's a different way, and maybe if I empowered my people and my employees and my partners to be able to feel free to say, I think that there's a different methodology, there's a different way we can tackle this. You get stuck in this rigid way of also not innovating solutions and not innovating the way you work, because you are almost founder led and not people led. For me, it's super important that you create an environment where people feel like they can express themselves, and also we don't kill creativity, because not all industries are creative, right? Not everyone is going to work at Search Kings, where I think a large amount of the work that you do is super creative, it's super engaging. You're talking to people every day about how to get their brands, their businesses out there, and getting them the publicity that they need and getting them the click-throughs. But when you're talking to people about their taxes, there's very few things to keep them excited to keep paying that.
So let's stay on that point, what you mentioned now around expression. We hear it all the time where businesses say we allow people to express themselves, or we allow people to arrive to work as who they are. How do you actually enable that environment? What initiatives or tools or frameworks do you use that allow your team to then feel like they can express themselves? Because, for example, I'm sitting now in a company and I'm feeling not heard and I'm not really understanding exactly who to go to, or I don't feel that I can actually share. What is it that you have done already that another business can start implementing that allows me then to express myself in a very professional or constructive manner?
Yo, you should have sent me these questions before,
It's so that again, it's this is completely non-scripted. So everyone, yeah,
No,
he's thinking on the spot here.
great, it's a great question. So I would take it back to before we hire someone, right? So I often talk to people about our interview process. And to be honest with you, it's a little bit mad, but I would say at least 70% of the people that we've interviewed has been so informal. It's been informal in the sense that it's either a coffee or a really cool chat. And the reason I do that and we do that here is because when I hire someone, I have to tick a certain box in my head to say, would I be comfortable having this person over for dinner at my house? Would I be comfortable with this person meeting my wife? And that for me is a more important tick box than competence, because I think competence you can teach. And it's tough to do what I'm doing because it doesn't scale well when you have 10,000 people, right? And you have an HR department. We've been fortunate enough to still be a 100-man organization and team led. But in the way that you bring people into your organization talks to how they can express themselves. So if you are meeting people where they are and you're creating a non-threatening environment and you're not giving them this 20-page psychometric test to do, and all of those things have got their merit. But for us, like number one, the most important is how we bring people in. Our culture for us is really family style. We're fortunate that we're still young enough to hire people that are, I guess, similar age to us. And there really isn't a boss. You asked me at the beginning how you must introduce me. And it's always so awkward for me talking to people and introducing myself as the CEO. We do that because LinkedIn needs you to have some form of a title, but we are titleless. We try to create an environment where from the cleaning lady, they feel like there's nothing they can't tell me. We don't always get it right, like all organizations, but to a large degree, we really just try to be a super open culture and an open environment. And I think that's the first steps in terms of getting that layer of transparency and allowing people to express themselves from a freedom perspective.
And if we were to look at on a weekly basis, what you're intentionally doing to make sure that to enable a bridge or a channel in a manner where people then can share, what does that practically look like for you? What is it that you are implementing or providing to everyone so that they can start expressing themselves?
I wrote a book called Searching Through Dustbins, and a chapter that comes to mind is take interest and listen and be genuinely invested. So, one of the things that I always say to people is that if you think about the word entrepreneurship, a lot of people don't understand that you are actually taking up the role of becoming a salesman. Like your job is actually primarily in sales and recruitment. That's it. Like as a founder, as a CEO, your job is to recruit the best people and figure out how you repeat sales. And the first people that you're always going to sell to are your people. The first people that you need to convince, the first people that you need to galvanize their energy, the first people that need to believe in this vision that you have are the people that work with you. We as leaders do so little investment in getting to know our people, and we over invest in the latest CRM and the latest way that we can create a sales funnel. But my view, and I know I've seen this with the different leaders in the organization, we're a super people focused business. We take a super genuine interest in people's lives. From a week to week, I can tell you that there's no point where any of the leaders in the different businesses don't know what's actually happening in people's lives personally, to the degree that they obviously are willing to share, or the things that they're struggling with. I don't want to say that we are best friends with our employees, but we definitely flirt with being really good mates with a lot of our employees professionally, because for us, I don't want a situation where one of my employees is struggling with a health issue or a home issue, and they feel like they can't be able to come to work and be able to say, hey, listen, this is what I'm going through, and please don't mind me for the next 2 days if my work is a little bit delayed. I think the day-to-day stuff that, unfortunately, I don't know how it scales when you get to 500 people, is being so close to your people and taking a genuine interest in their lives, like knowing how many taxis they take to get to work, how much that taxi fare is, and how much the school fees for their kids are, so that some of the things that they struggle with, they become like a personal thing that you as a business want to overcome. As I said, the day-to-day stuff is very difficult to say, here are the 10 things we do, but I can tell you what we overdo is take a genuine interest in all our employees' lives, where they are, and we meet them where they are, and we are committed to solving their issues. When we look back over the past 8-9 years that we've been doing business full time, you'd think that the things we celebrate is our revenue growth, our employee numbers, and look at our profits and look at the diversity of our services. But I must be honest with you, like the things that excite me and our leaders are things like our employees getting their first cars, and our employees getting a bond, and them saying that they took their kid out of the township school. Nothing wrong with the township school, but they're taking their kid to a better school that they believe is going to give them better opportunities, So those are the things that for us, like when we look back, we're like, man, look at all these stories that we've been able to create. You can't create those stories if you don't have any proximity to your employees. And the only way to create some sort of semblance of proximity is to be genuine about it and to say, Grant, how are you? But really, how are you?
I think that's profound, and if I were to summarize that in the way that I understand it, I think the first point there, in one word, is empathy. Is really practicing empathy, putting yourselves in their shoes in a way where, and again, the analogy that I always use for empathy versus sympathy is you're walking past and you see a massive hole, and you look down and someone's sitting there, and sympathy is looking down and going, wow, shame, that really is unfortunate. And empathy is just jumping down and sitting next to them and going, wow, this really does feel wet and cold and miserable. So if we were to practically look at then what you're doing, it really is where your priorities are and how you're communicating as a leadership team what your priorities are. Yes, the rule of business is that you have to be profitable so that you can be sustainable, so that you can continue operating it, because that's the best thing you can do for your team, is make sure that they're in a business that is sustainably run, that is actually going to be there next year. But at the same time, making it very clear what those top priorities are for your team to know, like what you're really focused on, like making sure that they are, as individuals, they are growing and developing, and even from a family point of view, that there's certain milestones that they're hitting, like gaining private transport or buying a house for their parents and so on. So I think, again, what I'm picking up here is that making it very clear to your team what your real priorities are, because then that's going to ignite the possibility that they are going to get excited about the fact that they can start sharing with you in that way, because they know it's something of value to you that you're actually prioritizing.
I'll tell you this. When I think about my articles, there are two specific incidences that I always remember. I didn't have a horrible article experience. I didn't have crazy managers or anything, but there were two jobs where it was intense. For 3 months, we were working on the wire, leaving the office at 12 every single day. Two specific different jobs. One job, actually, Our manager was still on secondment in the States, and he was still only making his way here in 2 months' time. So the third year had to be a third year as well as a manager at the same time on the job. But till today, I'm talking about an experience that happened in 2011. If that guy offered me a job to follow him, I would do so gladly because one, he just met us where we are. He understood the pressures. He rolled his sleeves. He would over explain any section we didn't understand. At night, if it was getting late, he'd make sure, does everyone have transport? Does anyone need me to drop them off? And there was no way he wouldn't go. And that job, for instance, we never got any overtime or anything. But when it came to 6 o'clock, like all of us, I'm talking every single member of the team, they were committed to staying till 2 o'clock because we almost felt like we were no longer trying to complete an audit, but we are literally trying to make sure that this guy shines as a manager and as a lead on the job. 3 months later, I was in a similar situation where it was so evident that the most important thing to that particular manager was the deadline. And all human cost didn't matter. He wasn't there. He left at 5 and he's like, I expect certain things to hit my inbox at 9 at night. And same situation, working till 2 in the morning, but very different people. And it goes back to that people don't leave organizations, they leave managers, right? And I knew already back then that I wanted to be the first type of leader where it doesn't matter what trench we find ourselves in, what war we find ourselves in. I want to make sure that the guys that are with me feel like I'm there with them in the trenches, similar to the Ukrainian president, if I make some sort of similarity.
And just to give an experience share as well, what we do at Search Kings Africa, we also say accounts don't leave, people do. Again, it's on that relationship aspect of things. Okay, so now we know that if I'm listening or watching this episode, I know now that I need to make it far more clear to my team in terms of what the priorities are. And it doesn't matter if I'm the CEO, it doesn't matter if I even am leading a team. It's within my role, within the team, I can make sure that I'm clear on what my priorities are in the best interest of the team. But how in us investing in the relationships with our team members, and if we are leading a team with people that we are leading, how do we make sure that we do not become too familiar with our team members? There's a fine line there between creating that professional organization, making sure that people have a forum in which to share and to give feedback and to feel heard. But at the same time, there's that line where if you cross it and you're too familiar, maybe now that is going to be detrimental, negatively influence the relationships. How have you possibly dealt with that?
We haven't got it right all the time. I think the relationships that exist in a workplace assume two things: that both parties are mature, that this is still a work environment, and that not just work, but great work must be produced at this place. And we want to make sure that we delight our clients. And that should be the number one thing that happens here, because to your point, sustainability only happens when clients are delighted, work is getting delivered, and we keep winning more work and sustainability is created. But you're right. I think there are definitely situations where kindness is often mistaken for weakness and friendliness is often mistaken for friendship. And I think it's such a fine line because, as I said, we don't always get it right. We've unfortunately have had to let go of one or two people where you can see that those are the lines and the barriers that have been crossed. But for us, like some of the things that we are fortunate about is that we work in a team of now 8 directors. And I guess the nice thing is that we're always able to check each other on certain situations and able to tap into each other to say, did I handle this situation correctly? Or this was poorly performed work. Did the feedback come through as constructive and not negative? I just think it's a daily thing, man. Again, leadership is not something that when you get to the office, it's just on the hat for I am a leader now. Like, I think it's something that you encompass, you go home with in your community, in your churches, in the environments that you influence. I feel like it's something that like you almost have to take on as a daily challenge and an ever-growing mindset and an ever-learning mindset about the things that will continue to make you a good leader. I think if you ask any of the JSE listed big Titan corporates, they will tell you as well that they are on a leadership journey up until the day that they leave. And some of the things that you are asking is stuff that we are still in ourselves figuring out to say, flip, we've got such an awesome culture here, but how does it scale at 200, 300 employees? We actually still don't have an HR department. Like we've got an awesome lawyer who does all our contracting and all that sort of stuff. And he's on a retainer. But I think some of these things, like I'm still super keen to learn in terms of how you scale some of these efforts and make sure that as you grow, you're not growing people who then become entitled, to say, oh, Abed is my mate, so I can come to work late, or
Mm.
I'm entitled to a 50% increase because Abed is my mate. And I think those are the things that every single day we are trying to solve. And luckily, these things are quite solvable in terms of talking to even guys like you and figuring out how do you oaks do it there. And these are the challenges that we have. I think leadership is the first thing that you have to almost be humble about, because you have to have an admittance that you don't know everything. And we certainly take that approach to say we are constantly learning how to make sure that we delight our customers and make environments that are safe and productive for employees.
I love where you're really just trying to make sure that this is a way of life, that this isn't something that switches on and off. And there's imperfection to this because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? So if I'm sitting in a position now where I would really like to contribute or invest in someone's career growth, what is it that I can do to help that person? Just to share my philosophy around empowerment is the fact that I don't believe that any single person, no matter who we are, can empower someone else. We can influence the environment in such a way where the person has the high probability or opportunity of empowering themselves. So, what could I do to influence someone's environment to help them? Is it weekly catch ups? Is it possibly sharing some articles that I've read or a documentary that I've just watched that was interesting? What are one or two things that you think someone should today start thinking about so that they can start influencing someone's environment in a very constructive and positive way?
I hate cliches, but you know how they say the most important weapon to rid yourself of things like poverty is education. So I think that a person can never do enough self development. So at our organization, for instance, things that our guys have access to is if they want to learn anything, whether it's Udemy, whether it's a course on Coursera, we will just pay and everyone can just do that at any given point of their lives. I think more important, like when I think about my organization and even the stuff that you guys are doing there at Search Kings, we have such a privileged position as SMMEs because you're still charting out this path. And quite often it's such a difficult position because I always see entrepreneurship as where you are at the top of the boat and the people that are working in the engine room, but you've got this incredibly difficult job to know where the ship is going, figure out where the icebergs are, and also from time to time going into the engine room and do all the work that everyone is doing. But the way to help people realize their goals, their dreams, and things that you can invest in and to create empowerment, again, to listen attentively to the things that they want to do, and also bring them into the vision of your business and bring them into the vision of the things that you see. Because before you know it, someone might say, Flip, I didn't know that you guys want to open a division in Africa to do one, two, three. That's something that I might be interested in growing into. And you start creating these opportunities for your people. One of the things that I did last year, which was a really interesting experiment, we started this thing called the 1,500 Startup Challenge. Every single employee of ours, I paid them 1,500 Rand. And I said, you have 3 months to come up with the business. You can only use 1,500 and you can only work on this in your spare time. Our clients must get you 8 hours a day. We had about 30, 40 people who participated. The rest were too bang. They're like, oh, I'm never going to come up with an idea. And I put this on Facebook and I used to give updates. What's inspired me the most is there's about 5 businesses that are still going now. One of the businesses is a good friend of mine who saw this on Facebook and decided to take the challenge on himself. And I hope he doesn't mind me sharing, but his name is Khudi. He started a thing called Deliverika Speed, which is a grocery delivery app in township communities.
I've seen that everywhere.
He's got like 40 drivers. He's raised a really good round of funding confidentially. And he's just been such an inspiration, man, and all from 1,005. And again, it's those stories for me that as leaders that we think of impact as this elusive big event. Impact is just small breadcrumbs that you leave for people along the way for them to pick up, to empower themselves, as you've said, and create worlds for themselves. And our job really is just to harness talent when we see it and point people in the right direction. Most of the time, people will surprise you. They are capable. They just need a little bit of an opportunity.
Outstanding. And my second last question, because it's incredible how 30 minutes really just goes quickly. With your network, who do you think would really offer value in one of our future episodes to people listening and watching?
There's an incredible guy that you've got to meet. His name is Aleph. Aleph is a Dutch national. He's been an entrepreneur his whole life, but he's a social entrepreneur. He's done big NPOs. He's currently the CEO of Africa Cocoon, which is a really impactful organization changing a lot of things about education in South Africa. He's lived 1,000 lives with the stuff that he's done. Also, just from an incredible leadership perspective, he's someone that I've looked up to immensely. So definitely someone I'm happy to connect you with.
Right, we'll definitely do that offline. And lastly, for everyone listening and watching, what's one piece of advice or one piece of insight that you would like to leave with them in the context of what they can do to practice leadership within their teams or within their organizations?
Yeah, maybe it's just a summary of some of the stuff I said. It's very easy to forget the reasons why organizations exist as they get bigger and bigger and bigger. The role of leaders is to make sure that they champion the mission, they champion the culture, because once you do that and you do that well, it becomes part of the fiber of the organization. And most businesses that exist today have an incredible why. And I think those that have lost a sense of leadership and a sense of ethics and a sense of direction are organizations where the why we exist is no longer told richly enough. And people joining those organizations don't actually know why Search Kings exist. Why does Thamani exist? Why does My Dough exist? What was the vision and what problem was this organization looking to solve? Was it unemployment? And the role of leaders is to recognize that as a business grows, you almost have to become more and more intentional about making sure that people understand the culture, why you exist, and also your leadership thinking and the things that drive your business. It's very easy to get carried away when you're 500 staff and there's 3 HR managers, 7 marketing managers, and to forget the people who are still so important and integral to the engine that makes up your organization. So important to keep the why strong and making sure that people understand why you exist and making sure your leaders get that.
Epic, man. That's super insightful. So I really do appreciate you joining us, and I'm certain that everyone gained a lot of insight today. For everyone, thanks for joining the second episode of Lessons in Leadership. The next episode will be coming on at the end of March. So really looking forward to that. And if you have any ideas, if you know of speakers that you think would really offer value, please reach out to me directly through LinkedIn, Grant Greef, and I will definitely respond to you via the DM as well.